When I was 20 years old, I started one of the first multi-artist gospel rap labels in the country. Who listens to that, they said. That has no future is what they told me. That's a dead end, they kept repeating. That's a career killer, they warned me. What they didn't understand is that a pioneer can see past what you think is possible and has the endurance to push it through. And my new media television platform is that pioneer's mind at work once again. I give the unheard a voice. I give the marginalized a stage. And I give the unfortunate a good hand. This is Christian media like you've never seen it before. Because this is Shawn Riff-Raff Studios.
I'm a Christian with $100 million vision. Can nobody box me and say that's a contradiction? Goal driven, God just blessed me with the ambition. Look up when the rest, he rests the definition. Been through hell, but the fire couldn't crisp them. Shut down the mouths of anybody, you dismissed them. 20 years gospel rap broke all the traditions. Cause from a teenager, I was on the same mission. So when he running God business, he got clothing, plus he got the boss with him. He got a squad with him, real no frauds with him. He run into the light cause he is an optimist. When everybody in the music biz narcissists, I will not rap a thing but my consciousness. Forever always a kingdom rap activist. It took a break for a minute, let's get back to this. Yeah. Been a soul winner, you cannot box me. Control center, you cannot box me. Flow with it, you cannot box me while I glow with it. You cannot box me cause I'm stepping out.
You ever heard someone say, Christianity isn't a religion, it's a lifestyle? You ever ask yourself, what does that even mean? A lifestyle isn't just a cool word to say. It's in what you do. It's in what you represent, what you portray, what you wear, how you feel. A lifestyle is who you are.
Yeah, I'm Christian, yeah, and I'm proud, yeah, and I'm proud, homie, I'm screaming and loud.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Elevation Podcast. My name is Shawn Riff-Raff, and today is a very important conversation. It's important for a lot of reasons. It's important because we have been living in a pandemic for the last 4 months, at least for the last 4 months. Some of us have been living in this pandemic for 5 months, just depending on where you live at. And we have had to deal with a lot of things with this pandemic that were abnormal to anyone that you've ever met, and things no one that you know or have ever met, have ever been through before. But there's a psychological part of this pandemic in which we are now in our lives dealing with. And that is what I really want to talk about today, where we find ourselves living with people that we don't like. And we find ourselves being with a spouse or with our children, and we learning to live with people in which, in this fast pace of America, we have really learned to ignore everything about a person, because the only thing we have done in America up until this point is work. And that's what America has really been about. We woke up in the morning, we go to work, we come home, we go to sleep, we wake up in the morning, we go to work, we come home, go to sleep, and work, as if this money is the only thing in the world. And because of that, during this pandemic, it has brought out a lot of stuff inside of us that we didn't know existed. A lot of the depth of a lot of our relationships that were lacking, and a lot of things that we weren't actually accomplishing or doing in our lives, or that we put to the back burner now, that we have to bring into the forefront. And so I think that this conversation that we're going to have with therapists and Kiana Bradley is going to be a really good conversation, something that you really need to listen to pay attention to, and to be a part of. Because I really think that if we're going to move forward. Once this thing is done and completed, we want to move forward. We actually don't want to go back to the way things were. We actually don't want to go back. We want to go forward in wholeness. We won't want to go back to where we weren't whole and we were just so busy that we didn't notice that we weren't whole. We actually want to go forward into wholeness. And so that's what my goal is today. And I know this won't be the last time. This won't be the only time, that I speak with Kiana Bradley. But this is going to be a really good conversation. I hope you guys stay with me during the course of it. Comment, like, share, please share it. And let's get into a real conversation about this. This is the Elevation Podcast. My name is Shawn Riff-Raff. Let's do it. King. Royalty, stand up, brand up, fam up, hand out, no way, hands up, know what, name that, it's mine, claim that, it's time, message, we shine, above all, the decline, the darkness cannot last, the shadow of my past, before I gain knowledge of heritage, I have the bloodline that I share, most powerful out here, the mover of mountains is who I am touting, the richest among us is who I'm the son of, from sundown to sun up, that's how I the come up, position is just mine, the favor in due time, can't have it, man, you lying, the powerless, you trying, enemy beneath me, there's nothing to teach me, the people receive me, cause my God complete me, and my God does keep me, and my God they free me, and my God redeem me, and my God relieve me, king is the million, crown me, I am winning my position, God's giving, God's in it, God's chosen. Ladies and gentlemen, as promised, right here on the Elevation Podcast, I have Kiana Bradley. She is a licensed clinical professional counselor here in Maryland. She is going to take us through some of the things that she has learned, and she can show us and she can help us and get to another level. What's up?
Hey, Shawn, how you doing?
Hey,
how you
good to have you here. It's good to have you here. We have had plenty of different experiences in our lives. From Christian hip hop mostly, and doing shows and traveling a little bit, and it has been pretty fun. This season of your life is a lot different because I get to see you from a different perspective than I've seen you before, and that's really cool. So tell us a little bit about what you do, because I'm not in this season, so I don't really know. So tell us a little bit about it. Say it again.
You said you're not in this season?
I'm not in this season. Like, I don't know you in this season. So introduce yourself to me, huh?
Well, hey, Shawn, my name is Kiana. I enjoy long walks on the beach. I enjoy.
You're right.
But you know what? We kind of talked about this before. You knew this person.
Right.
It's just I'm a little older now. I got a little bit of experience, right? Because, even when I was rapping, I wanted to get deep in my lyrics. And, remember when Shawn, he challenged me to say, stop always being deep. It just rap about anything. So that was hard. But
have fun for once in your life.
But now this is what I'm saying. This is fun for me, right? And so this person, Shawn, this person is someone who is literally living out my mission and my vision of my organization, Authentic Connections Therapeutic Services. So even when you think about the name of my organization, it's a lifestyle for me. Right? When you think about authentic, you think about real, you think about genuine, think about connections, you think about being able to come together, then you think about therapeutic, healing, right? And then services. I'm going to help you get real with yourself, genuinely with yourself and others, to cultivate healing in the heart and mind.
Right.
That's how I do.
So tell me about these days, there's a lot of stuff about the sort of psychology, or just the emotional place that a lot of us are in as it pertains to being in a pandemic, as it pertains to being worried about getting sick, and even in the relationships we have with the people that we can connect with, which are most of the people in our houses. Those relationships are mad stressed. I talked last week about, parents having now to become teachers and actually having to learn things about their kids that they didn't really know before. And so it's a hard sort of life. I want to sort of, as much as we can over the next few minutes, talk about dealing with the stresses as it pertains to being sort of in this place of, I would think for most people, extreme anxiety. Like you can even tell when you drive now that people are living in sort of a state of anxiety because the way people drive is insanity now. And it's like, it wasn't like that before. People still couldn't drive before, but these days it's like, it's like, whoa, what is happening out here?
Right. You know what? You said a lot, and that's what's going on now. It's causing everything we do to be bunched up. Right. I think the overall, or what I hear a lot and what I do, even from if my business, my practice, my clients, my friends, my family, is the term overwhelmed.
Right.
Because now it's an automatic, you're automatically having compound issues, right? We call it complex trauma. And when you say complex trauma, what are you saying is it's more than one distressing event that's taking place. Right. You have one. So somebody may have not only been molested, but also abandoned. Not only been abandoned, but also a victim of abuse, right? And so when you say, so right now, even when you're talking about if I'm having issues with my child who's going through the teenage years, that's normal, right? But now you got my child's going through teenage years and the pandemic, right? And civil unrest. Like it's constantly something on top of it, and it's something serious. Right. So yes, that makes sense. So even when you have parents, when you talked about parents having to learn their child, what's happening now, people didn't sign up to be stay-at-home mothers or stay-at-home fathers, right? That wasn't something that they wanted to do, but now they're forced, right? You're forced to be with your child, not just 8 hours or the 5 hours you see them in between them coming home from school at night. You have to be with your child 24/7. And that's a lot. It is for somebody who's not used to it, right?
Not to mention just you're with your child 24/7 and you can't get rid of them. Like you can't send them to the Chuck E. Cheese because they not open. You can't, you can't send them to the friend's house because they might got the COVID. You can't, you literally with them all day and all night.
Yep.
Without a break.
And different people didn't sign up to be homeschool teachers.
Right.
There's a reason why people didn't sign up for this stuff, and now they're being forced on top of their job, on top of having to telework, on top of being in a relationship, being in a marriage, being or with family members that were supposed to be over for a little while because they're getting themselves together. Then the pandemic hit, and now they can't go nowhere, and y'all in pandemic together. All of that cortisol. That's cortisol is the hormone, the stress hormone. It shoots straight up. Absolutely.
Right. Mm-hmm. How is it? How are people able to deal with that kind of stress? Like, what is some things like I'm sure that you're doing? I'm sure that you're doing plenty of sessions these days. What methods of coping coping or dealing with stress are you giving to the people that that you're seeing these days?
Absolutely. So when you think about the stress hormone, you also want to think about endorphins, right? You want to think about the endorphins is what makes you feel good. So you got to come up with things. How can I get those endorphins up, right? You can get them from smiling. You can get them from, that's why when you are working out and you have things of that nature, the goal is to figure out what can I do while I'm home. And I think the biggest part or the biggest issue I see is that when you focus so much on what you can't do, right? I can't go to the gym. I can't go, I can't take a trip. I had that trip planned for April, and this is the first time I haven't had my trip. So now it makes you feel, it adds on to the stress. right?
Right.
You
Right.
focus on, I can't do this. I can't go to the movies. I can't go out to eat. I can't, that causes more. So the first thing I try to help people to do is stop saying can't, or
Mm,
stop focusing on what I can't do. Go ahead and
mm,
write down for once and for all. Write down what you can't do, and then just set it to the side.
right.
Because the focus on that will cause your anxiety to go up. And anxiety is excessive fear,
Hmm.
right? It's excessive worry. So now on top of me already having this worry because of all of these things that make sense to have worry for,
Right.
I am now worrying about what I can't do,
Wow.
right? So the
Wow.
first thing is, for once and for all, write down what you can't do and leave it at that. You don't ever have to say it again. You don't have to talk about with your friends.
I
Park
feel
it.
you.
Right. And the second thing is, once you do that, figure out what you can do. Right. You can
Right.
go for a drive. One thing what we can do is still be safe and not be around other people. We can go for drives. Right. And now again, going outside, because we don't get an opportunity. Some people don't get an opportunity to go outside. Even if you do, it's not as much. So
Mm.
taking the things that before pandemic we took for granted, these are luxuries now. So taking a drive, it's a luxury. Taking a drive by some water or by a field, looking at flowers, those things actually get those endorphins going. So the goal is to figure out the things, what can I do? And then if I'm talking to my clients, I'm now exploring what things make you happy. What things, it's like going to back to basics. What do you like doing? There are adults now who are coloring. There are adults now who have purchased paint, doing puzzles, stuff that you never thought about doing. So what
And
can
I
I
tell
do?
you, Joanne's ain't seen so much of me. I was telling my wife that yesterday. I was like, because we was in Joanne's yesterday. I was like, I don't know if you thought that when you married me, you was going to be married to Joanne's too.
That, wait, that's on your part. You going to Joanne's to get your stuff.
Mhm.
That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful thing.
How do you help couples
Uh-oh.
that may have with the busy life of Americans, we work, like we just work too much, right?
Right.
So our
Mhm.
lives are busy. Like we pretty much wake up in the morning, go to work, come home, go to bed, wake up in the morning, go to work, come home, go to bed. That's pretty much our lives. And so, since this slowdown of everything sort of happened, everything shuts down, nobody's going to work. Um, and then all of a sudden couples have to deal with each other in a way that they could ignore before.
Right.
And so now you're sort of you're having to deal with your spouse or whatever, and just in a way you never had to deal with them before, or you have to face them in a way you never had to face them before. And
Mhm.
and so now it's like you might be out here realizing you don't really even like your spouse. um, um,
Right. Right.
you
Right.
know um, and so how does one navigate through this different sort of this change, this forced sort of change in relationship? And I think a lot of that, a lot of this sort of forced change in relationship is really caused by having to slow down in this particular pandemic and really deal with the other person.
Absolutely. I mean, you said a whole lot, Shawn, and there's a lot of that happening. It's with couples. So I'm gonna come back to couples, because I just don't want to alienate couples to say it's because it's just you all. It's just married folk, or it's just the couples. It's family members. If you are in a house with somebody other than yourself during
Mm-hmm.
this time, there is, again, we talk about that stress. There is an increased stress that's constantly there. It's not going anywhere.
Right.
If you turn on the TV, you go on social media, you're going to see something that's going to remind you, oh yeah, we're in a pandemic, a
Yeah.
conversation or something. So back to the couples, one of the things, it could be people are realizing that they don't like each other. What's more often than not that's happening is, it's not that you're realizing you don't like, is that you now have to deal with it more often than you would like, right? and you don't have those outlets, right? So let's just say, going home for 8 hours, going to work for 8 hours, you might communicate with your spouse every so often, but guess what? You're in each other's space for that period of time. And so and guess what? You've never experienced this before, right? Most of us are not used to being with our spouse for this amount of time. You've never had to do it. Even if you went on vacation and y'all stayed for a week or 2 weeks, guess what? You ain't do it for 4 months.
Right.
So this is all new. So the first thing I do with couples is first taking some time to realize and acknowledge this is new for us. Right. This is new. This is new. So now I have to it's almost like you have to learn how to navigate in this space. You've never been here before. Right? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it's like, I also liken it with kids. I don't know. Yes, I know what it means to be 15. I was 15 at once. But guess what? When I was 15, I didn't have social media. When I was 15, I didn't have a cell phone. So there are certain things that I don't relate with these kids that's 15 at this point.
Yes.
Nobody that I know in this generation has been through a pandemic. Nobody that I know has had to be quarantined before. We've read about it. We've never done that. So the same way, it's like learning, being open to understand that this is something new. I need to learn how to adjust in this space without blaming and pointing fingers. We'll get into that as well.
So how is it that how do you begin to let's say deal with that in that space? So I know, we know that now, sort of acknowledge that we haven't had it. We never dealt with each other in that space before. We're both at a sort of a place of anxiety. We don't know what's going to happen, and we're forced to be in each other's face all the time. And it's, it can become pretty tumultuous just in that emotional space. So what are some what are some steps or some or just some advice that you could give to somebody to sort of deal with that and not come out of this whole thing wanting to wring someone's neck?
Yes. First of all, I'm so thankful, especially for the Black community, that it's normalizing therapy. It's normalizing going to counseling. There are so many clients that I've seen that come in and have to say, they can't tell their parents, or they couldn't at one point tell their parents because of the stigma that's behind it. And I get, especially the older generation, right? Because of the stigma that's placed on it, and especially what we as Black people had to go through, even in my field, right? Sure. So the first goal I would say is, if you are experiencing an increased number or feeling of conflict and anger, and you're in this time you're saying, I don't want to deal with this person, I will say get professional help. I would say seek out a counselor. Right now, a lot of insurance companies are doing they're waiving cost sharing. With cost sharing is actually co-pays, deductibles. Check in with your insurance company if that's an issue. People are because this is an investment, because what you don't want to do is make a decision in pandemic, and once you're out of pandemic, you got to deal with the consequences of a way you don't even feel anymore. Right. Coming out of this and realizing, dang, I wish I had them now. You don't want to do that. So that's the first step. My first thing would be to sit down, because it's nothing like me being able to answer questions of somebody and somebody being able to put their stuff at my table, and I help to filter. Right? That's what I do. I help to filter, and you make your own decisions. I just help you to come out of your own frustrations and to tell what belongs to you and what belongs to them. Right. Therapy with the first step. Back in the day, I've learned this. I think maybe I may have even learned this in undergrad, but it's a technique called HALT, right? HALT, right? when you're in conflict, and conflict is disagreement, when you feel like you're in disagreement, I'm going back and forth with somebody. If you want to halt when you feel these four things, right? H is for hungry. When you are hungry, stay away from conflict. Don't try to have conversation. Don't try to tackle a situation. Don't try to tackle, when you did this, I was frustrated.
Right.
A, so we got HALT. H is hungry. A is angry. Once you get into an anger state, it is very difficult to communicate while we are angry.
Right.
Right? It's very difficult, because now we have to, what you want me to be able to do is have this intense emotion, right, in my space, as well as be able to problem solve and understand you and think what you're doing. It's too much management happening. It's too much management. So when I'm angry, that's a time to say, you know what? Let's table this. Let's table this, and let's talk about this at another time. That gives that person the opportunity to cool off and think, and then it gives you an opportunity to cool off and think. Now, usually when I say this with couples, somebody says, well, they don't ever want to talk about it again. Or then, they want to act like it doesn't happen. No, I'm not saying don't talk about it again and act as if though it didn't happen, because it did. It is an opportunity to take a break. You both agree about a time to come back together. If it's whatever time now, say if it's 12 p.m., you guys agree, you know what? We got lunch, we got this. Let's come back and talk about this at 3 p.m. We might say, let's come back and talk about this tomorrow, because we got a lot going on today. Right. So hungry, angry. Now we got the L. We got the lonely. When you're feeling lonely, right? Feeling lonely, typically it's an emotion. It's an uncomfortable emotion. So when you are feeling a certain type of way, you don't want to put your stuff on somebody else. Gather yourself, understand what's yours, and then communicate. Right. The last one I'm going to say is the T. Hungry, angry, lonely, tired. If you're tired, if you are emotionally, and this is, a lot of this takes self-awareness. Self-awareness is being able to understand, here's what I'm thinking, here's what I'm feeling, here's what I want to do. Self-awareness is important whenever you are in any type of relationship. And when I'm tired, I know for me, I do therapy all day. So all day, I'm seeing between 7 to 8 to 9 clients a day. It is not good for me to try to have a conversation with somebody that wants to talk about something real deep or conflict after I've seen 8 people during that day. Give me some time. You want to try to talk to me right after, I'm probably going to be amped because I'm tired. So I'm working on fumes or reserves. Right. Recognize I'm tired. You get to say, hey, I'm tired right now, or I am, but I hear what you're saying. I do want to hear you out, but I want to give you the best of me that I can. So can we talk about this a little later? Does it make sense? What do you think about that? What do you think about Hawk, Shawn?
Oh no, that's pretty dope. That's really it brings me to another question though. So statistically speaking, and statistics don't always tell you the entire story, but statistically speaking, there have been more abuse or domestic violence calls to the police, and the domestic violence since the pandemic has been up. And so we can infer from that statistic, which doesn't mean that our inference from that statistic does not mean that this is the truth, but we can infer from that statistic that that people are, people in abusive places are more likely, or the abuser is more likely to have a higher stress level, and it come down on, or a higher anxiety level, and it come down on the people that are within a household. If I'm gonna take it away from a physical abuse aspect of it and put it sort of into an emotional abuse aspect of it, because a physical abuse aspect is a lot more, that there's a whole lot more things you should be doing. But when we talk about from an emotional abuse aspect of it, how, if someone is in a space and dealing with emotional abuse and can't leave that space, right? And even the complexities of the fear of leaving that space, like I don't want to leave, what what sort of thing could we say if someone sat in your office and was talking emotional abuse, right?
Right, because nobody does that in real life. Nobody does that.
What's that?
Sits in my office and talks about emotional abuse.
So you realize that they're talking about emotional abuse. What do you say to them? What is the response to you? What is the move? What's the advice? What's the, because it's not like you can say, get out the house. Because we're in the middle of a pandemic, it's hard to say that. Like, it's just, you can't, can't go to a hotel. You can't, so you really, what kind of advice do you give, or what kind of direction do you give someone who, the height of home, the climate is just all the way up all the time?
Right. So when you talk about emotional abuse, many people don't even recognize that they're actually experiencing it. Depending on where, depending on where you're coming from, it's easy to mistake. I think I just posted. It's easy to mistake a pet peeve and something like a pet peeve is basically it's something that gets on our nerve, but it's not toxic. It's not not abuse. It's not. It's right, but then you do have those toxic behaviors. So I think once somebody recognizes that, wait, I'm being emotionally abused, the first thing I do though is I need to get clarity on what are you talking about? Why? Because if somebody is saying something is emotionally abusive because it's uncomfortable for them, right? Give you an example. If somebody is saying they are emotionally abusive towards me, I say, what does it look like? That's my question. Because first of all, I'm not going to act like I know what you mean by emotional abuse. That's not fair to you. But to gain clarity, I ask questions. So they might say, every time I ask them to do something, they tell me no. And it's like they don't love me. Sometimes it's people's perceptions of what that abuse is. So that's my first thing. My first thing is I'm always about self-awareness and take a responsibility for what I think, feel, and what I do. So is this something that I'm perceiving to be emotional abuse, or is it emotional abuse? Let's talk about emotional abuse. Emotional abuse is gaslighting. Gaslighting is when something blatant happened. You know it happened, right? You know that this individual was cheating. You know you saw this text message. You know you saw him do whatever or her do whatever. You saw this. But then when you approach or you say something about it, you
crazy.
Right. That is because now that causes you, because on the flip side of it, as the person who caught the other person, I don't want this to be true. I really don't, because it causes people to question their own self. What's wrong with me and all of that. So now, because I don't want it to be true authentically, when you say it's not true, I'm now like, wait, maybe it's not true. Because why would he say it's not true? Why would she say it's not true? So those are, or name calling, right? Constantly criticizing everything you do. Those are like abuse, emotional abuse, especially when someone is, calling you stupid. Someone is calling you, you can't do nothing right. You gonna be just like your father, mother, sister, brother, or whatever. But so typically the name calling in and of itself, and the name calling that's used to guilt or control. That's abuse. Okay, so now how do you deal with it though? How do you deal once you recognize, is this me? Am I taking their no to me as abuse? Right? You first got to recognize, is it really abuse? And then once you recognize, no, this is abuse. They're trying to manipulate me. They are name calling me. They're trying to control me in whatever way, whether that is you're doing it overtly, which is easy to see, or covertly. you kind of doing it by cover up underneath.
Mm-hmm.
Once you realize this, now you got to recognize, what am I giving energy to, right? So let's go back to that gaslighting situation. You know what you saw, and the person says, that's not what I saw. That's going back and forth with that. That actually causes the person who is being gaslit to now question and take you through an emotional turmoil. What I'm trying to say, you know the word.
Turmoil.
There you go. That's taking you through that. And so your goal is to once you ask the question and they tell you no, your goal is not to change somebody's mind. Your goal in approaching them is to try to talk about it in a sensible way. If they don't want to talk about it, you got to give it to them. You know, it's at this point, especially when you can't do anything about it, you can't go anywhere because you don't want to escalate the situation. Right. So now it's not taking stuff personal. So that's part of it. So once you approach and they give that, you give them room to do themselves. You give them room to make their own decisions. Then you say, okay, what we about to eat? It's not ignoring it because, we're never going to deal with that. You can't force this person to change their mind. You cannot. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so the other thing with emotional abuse as well is, especially if you can't get out, don't take it personal. Don't internalize somebody else's opinion of who you are and take it as the truth about who you are. It is not the truth about who you are. Who you are is enough. You were created. You were created as a person with a purpose in and of your own self before you even met this person. So the goal, remember, when people respond, they are responding from their own motivations. So the reason why people emotionally abuse is because they're trying to control, right? The reason why I'm emotionally abusing you is because I want you to do whatever. I want you to act in a way that's going to make me feel good about myself. So that's why they're doing it. And so now, of course, people who abuse and are emotionally abusive to those they love or in their space, they actually come from some trauma. I guarantee you, sit me down with a person who physically, emotionally abuses someone, you're also going to sit me down. We'll have a long conversation. There's probably going to be some tears there. There's probably going to be some regret. They have their own issues. That's why, don't take it personal. Their issues is not your issue. Makes sense.
And that brings that it's such an interesting thing, because in the world, we sort of have begun normalizing things that are abusive and toxic as just part of it. Even in relationships, there's emotional abuse that are happening, and we begin to normalize emotional abuse as normal behavior, and as if the abused person has to sort of deal with that kind of abuse, and because this is just sort of normal behavior, or that's how they are, or don't do this, or you're gonna set them off, or what I'm saying, like and it's like, no, it's not your problem or your fault, and it's nothing that you're doing that is setting off an abusive person. They're abusive. What I'm saying? And sort of we are in a place where we normalize a lot of things that we don't want to deal with. Like we're normalizing stress, or we're normalizing we normalize a lot of things that we don't want to deal with. Talk about that for a second. And how in this culture we just sort of we're normalizing things that we need to really deal with.
Yes. So that's actually a therapeutic technique. When we're taught to normalize with our clients, right? Normalizing is the ability to help people understand that this happens to a lot of people, or this happens. It's normal for you to feel stress when you're in a pandemic. Right? You want to normalize things that are normal, right? You want to know what happens. Like what you're saying is, when you begin to normalize something that is toxic and now you're making it normal, it's very hurtful. It's hurtful for the individual, because now you're putting yourself in a position to be emotionally abused, physically abused, verbally abused, and whatever else abuse you want to do, because you're now making it okay in your mind, right? And so go ahead. I thought you were about to say something. The goal. So what we want to do is when that happens, you want to think about indoctrination as well, right? So one of the things that when I talk to parents, when we, especially I know when I grew up, I got what you call a whooping, right? And a whooping, Shawn, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but I know you come from very, but a whooping is when a child does something wrong and there's a belt, there's a hand, there's a something, and they get tapped on their butt or whatever, right? A lot of times when we do that, we normalize to say, I'm hurting you to teach you because I love you.
Right.
Do you see those things? So by the time someone is basically, not everybody, because don't come at me, not everybody is taking extension cords and going overboard. But even in that, think about that mindset. I am hurting you to teach you because I love you. I'm hurting you in order to teach you because I love you. When you think about domestic violence situations, I am hurting you in order to teach you because I love you. It's the same way. So that's one way you got indoctrination. The second way you have is if you have an alcoholic parent, or you have a parent who's not emotionally available, or you have a parent who has narcissistic tendencies. Right. When you think about narcissistic tendencies, you think about narcissism, it's all about me, what I think, what I do. I need to be puffed up. I need to be the center of attention. And I'm going to, if you put narcissism on the spectrum and you go to the very narcissistic trait, I have to tear you down in order to make me feel better. So now you have this. So now the alcoholic parent, the narcissistic parent, the unavailable parent, the abandonment, you recognize how to now normalize that toxic behavior as love. So a lot of times, Shawn, people are they're not just doing it because, it's fun to do. They're doing it because it's comfortable to do. And I tell my clients all the time, we get comfortable in the uncomfortable. So we can complain. You can be in a relationship. You cannot like it. You can complain. You can say, she does this, he does this. He's always lying. She's always talking to somebody else. He's never taking responsibility for his actions. She's always, calling me names, telling me, putting her money in my face. She's always doing this. But that is comfortable. You're used to that banter. You're used to that. You're used to being in a space where somebody doesn't recognize or validate how you feel. You're used to that. So the first thing, in order to stop normalizing, you first got to be aware, and that's where therapy come in. Now, I'm promoting therapy, Shawn. A lot of times when people hear therapists promoting therapy, I can't even accept no new clients. So whoever sees this, they can't get therapy from me. I don't benefit. I benefit because I see it work. I see my clients going through and getting through their stuff, even when they still going through stuff, but they know how to get through. My couples know how to get through because they have learned to have an objective view. So that's the piece about normalizing toxic behaviors. It can come back from childhood. So now, authenticity, right? I always talk about authenticity, the ability to be yourself, think your true self, think your true thoughts, feel your true emotions. Many of us don't do that, so we don't understand. We're not putting how we really feel in the forefront of our own mind. So a lot of times we see the behavior, but because we're not authentic with ourselves, we go straight to changing the behavior to make it fit. Because let's put it in female term, because I did that. I absolutely have done that before. He got a nice job. He got a nice car. He can communicate. That's big for me. Oh my goodness, he could communicate. He can, he's educated, whatever you want to put in. And then, but yet he lies. Yet you keep seeing that he's not being truthful about small things, about big things, but he got all these other things. So sometimes we take on toxic behaviors because of the behaviors that we like. Listen, Shawn, I tell people all the time, there's nobody who is 100% toxic all the time. We have a difficult time with ands. Like, think about when a serial killer, right? It's your next door neighbor. They film the news camera come up. They ask them, what do you think about such and such? The first thing you hear those people say is, he was so nice. I would have never thought that this happens, because we had some moments, I'm Kayana, I'm in the moment, I can communicate, I'm very articulate, and then there's other moments I'm mad. I got an attitude.
Right. Actually, it's probably like most of the time you're not toxic, but it's it's like most of the time toxic people aren't toxic. It's when they are toxic that actually matters. Yep.
Absolutely. But it's those times they're not that we want to hold on to, because it feels, when somebody's in your space and they're not utilizing that toxic behavior, it feels good. They care. It feels like love, and it is at that point in time. Whatever you think love is, if you think love is connection, if you think love is support, if they are doing that right then and there, so it's not easy to separate from a relationship, because they're not saying I want to be with them because they're toxic. I want to be with them because they're hitting me. I want to be with them because they are name calling me. They're not saying that. They're saying, I want to be with them because when they are not name calling me, they're being supportive. When they are not hitting me, they're holding me and making me feel comfortable. When they're not, sometimes, I tell clients all the time, if it's the sex, say it's the sex. If it's the money, say it's the money. And that's the ability to be authentic with ourselves without judging ourselves. Looking at ourselves for face value and then figuring out, do I want this? Or do I not want to deal with this? And that's the cost benefit analysis, right?
Now, I want to go back to something that you mentioned before, and I think that is an important thing to say. You talked about toxic parenting, but you talked about it from the kid's point of view. Like if you have a toxic parent. So I don't know that I think that any parent is purposely toxic, right? And so how could you, self-awareness is something that you've talked about a lot during this time. And I think like self-awareness is probably like the most important thing one can have with himself. And so how do you point out the toxins within you that make you a toxic parent? Like, how would you know that you are a narcissistic parent? Or how would you know that you're a toxic parent?
So the first thing is one
way.
Is
it a Google search so we can find a question there?
I was just about to say, no, Shawn, I was just about to say.
Oh, really?
You look it up. There's sometimes, and especially at this point, that word narcissism, narcissistic, all of that's circling around. That's been really in the forefront of a lot of people conversations.
Right, but it's so general. It's so generally used. I think it's often misunderstood as in what's toxic narcissism and what's normal narcissism, because everybody has a little bit of it. Everybody got a little narcissistic.
So here's what you're doing. You're taking a term that is you're trying to normalize narcissism. It's not. It's you can
no.
say
I'm not.
You can say self. Let's put another name, because there's no such thing as normal narcissism.
No. Yeah, I mean, like, people take normal actions as narcissistic when sometimes you know, you got a moment where you're full of yourself, and everybody has that moment, you know what I'm saying, where I look good today, slim,
Right.
you know what I'm saying? That's
Right.
okay. That's not narcissistic. I think some people misinterpret normal actions as narcissism. Let me say it like that.
Right.
Let me
And when you
even
get
that one
into
out.
the diagnosis of it, you're now
Right.
got to accompany that with also behaviors. So remember when I'm talking about, if I'm putting others down, I'm not able. It can be your moment. You know, let's just say you and your wife, you have a party for your wife, and you know she got a plaque for something, but in this moment, you start talking about all the awards that you got. You start
Right.
talking about everything that you make the moments about
You gotta take that moment away from her and make it about
Right.
you. Yes.
Make it about
Right.
you. And then
Right.
every so often you might check in. And because sometimes narcissism also, because you got to remember, one of the biggest characteristics of someone who struggles with or who has a narcissism diagnosis and who also has tendencies, charm. People forget that. It's charm. So that means they know how, because they actually need to bring you closer so they can break you and keep you. It's like a drug user, you know, depending on the drug seller, the person who sells the drug. Because
Dealer.
if I
Call
get you,
those
the dealer, there you
dealers in
go.
the streets.
You know, I haven't been in the streets in a long time. You know what I'm saying? Not in those streets no more. You know, I've been delivered, right? So I never sold drugs. Let me not. That's my story. But at the end, yeah. So but you can go on Google and research toxic behaviors of toxic parents who struggle with narcissistic tendencies,
Right.
and it will pull up. You know what parenting is so hard. I was just talking to my friend last night, and I said parenting, and I'm coming from a standpoint of not being a parent.
Right.
It's very difficult because you are in charge of this other human being, not as a God to them, but as a person who is to teach and guide them on their journey to become an adult. So that means you are there to teach them. When they're having an attitude with you, it's not for you to take it personal. It is for you to now teach them, here's what you're having right now. You're having an attitude. Let's figure out why we're having. That's hard to do as a parent when you feel like you're being disrespected and you paying the rent, you buying the shoes, you buying the clothes. You get what I'm saying? There's so
yes, I do. I actually do.
Right. So when you it's difficult, and then because you are supposed to be this parent, right? Parents are supposed to be perfect. Parents are supposed to not have no issues, and so some parents come that way though. Some parents try to parent in the standpoint, I gotta have this all together all the time.
Right.
And because of that, it kind of creates them not having the ability to listen to their kids, not having the ability to be open to hearing their kids because they're so focused on teaching their kids or building their kids or making their kids, molding their kids, instead of taking a more coaching approach of parenting, where you're now more so, you see what you see and you're trying to help this child, especially when they get in their teenage years, because now they're in their teenagers years because they're about to move out, they're about to go, right? So how can I learn what type of parent I am? First, you got to have humility. That's a hard thing, because whatever your parenting style is, guess where it's coming from? It's still coming from parents are people. Parents have their childhood. Parents have their traumas. I tell people, kids all the time that want to come in and talk about their parents, and they like, hey, she think, and he be all like, it's like, could you imagine? You tell me right now that you struggle with your self-esteem. Now you get pregnant. What happens to your do you think your self-esteem issues automatically just, oh, I don't have self-esteem issues anymore?
It's over.
Right? So parents got this stuff too. So the goal in that is for a parent to understand that they're not perfect. But you know what? I know I'm not perfect. When I'm with my clients, I say, what do you think about that? What is that? Does that make sense to you? I don't ask that just so you can be like, oh, no. Sometimes they say, no, I think it's this. I'm like, okay, cool. being able to be taught is lifelong. Michelle Obama's book, Becoming. I love her book because where she was in her life, she is still at the point where she understands that she's still becoming.
Yeah. Yeah.
So be okay with becoming. Be okay with, I can learn something different. I need to check in, and because kids bring out stuff in people. They bring out stuff in you that you didn't even know existed, because you didn't have to care for your spouse, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your husband, your wife, like you have to do a child. Right? Because children, absolutely, it's no conditions. When you have a baby, it's no conditions on that baby. It's nothing. And the goal is to get into that space where I'm open to be self-aware. And even when there's things about me that I don't like, I cannot like them. I also can work on them, and I also can change them. And I think some people, when they find out something about themselves that they don't like, they judge themselves. When you judge yourself, you blame yourself. When you blame yourself, you shame yourself. When you shame yourself, you now have to build yourself back up. And sometimes when that shame comes, oh, you wrong, you messed up, you now ignore it. Now you got to push it down and act like it's not there because you don't want to feel the shame. It's not that you don't want to know what's going on. You just don't want to feel the shame that's attached to the thinking, when I make a mistake, I am what I do. So because I made a mistake, I am a mistake. And so I can't take on responsibility for the mistake, because to take on the responsibility of the mistake is to say, I am a mistake.
Right.
This thing gets deep, Shawn. This thing
Man, it's been such a good conversation that, you know, we about out of our time here. It's like been such a good conversation. It's like I got like 35 more questions. We got to do a part 2 of this because we have to do a part 2 of this. But I want to hear from you before we leave, before we got to close this thing out. Some final thoughts to some of the people who are watching, who are commenting. Just some final thoughts about being here. Just some final advice or final some final things you can give to people real quick. Here on the show, give me some final thoughts.
My final thoughts, I think the biggest thing I have to remind people is that we are human. You know, you will make mistakes. We will have difficult days. We will have things we don't like. And my deal is give yourself acceptance, right? Accept wherever you are in this moment. Even if you don't like where you are, accept it. Still show yourself love, so that if you have the desire to change, you still can change it. You want to give yourself acceptance. You want to give yourself understanding. Understand why are you here? Not why because you're judging yourself and you're saying, why are you still doing this? It's why for understanding. This is why I'm doing this. And then once you do that, you give yourself patience. You're still learning. We're still becoming. So I would say in this moment of a pandemic, this is not normal. Give yourself an opportunity to take your breaks, take a drive, go outside for a second, sit in the car, take a walk, do something so that you can accept the acceptance, your patience with yourself and understanding yourself. No judgment allowed in here. In your mind, no judgment allowed. And you got this. Trust me. This too shall pass. You will come to another space because that's the ebbs and flows of life. There's going to be times when you're going to hit peaks of greatness and it feels good, and lows of why in the world is this happening and I need to get out of this. And then there's times when you're just going to be able to coast. But wherever it goes, just have hope for the next moment that you'll get out, the next moment you'll get into, the next moment you'll coast. Make sense?
Yeah. This too shall pass. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Kiana. This is Kiana Bradley. Give me your business again and give me your website and all of that good stuff. Of course, you can't book her because she's booked, but whatever, you can get on her waiting list. I don't know if she
no, you ain't putting your hand to my thing. Authentic Connections, right? So my website is AuthenticConnectionsTS.com. So it's authentic, then connections with S, TS.com. And, at Kiana Speaks on social media. And all that good stuff. If you have questions for me, feel free. You know, when I do get time, I do try to answer people's questions as much as possible, because that's the only thing I can give you, because I can't be your therapist. But that's kind of what I do now. But this is a beautiful thing. This is a beautiful thing.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you doing this. I appreciate you coming on. We got to do it again. We've got to do it again soon, because a lot of people need this. A lot of people need it. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kayana.
All right. Thank you. Y'all enjoy.
All right.
Have a good one. All right.